This evening on The Rock Newman Show, he's provocative, inspirational, and doesn't hold his tongue. 20 years ago, Dr. Boyce Watkins taught finance at Syracuse University, but he left the academic world behind to create a media brand focusing on Blackonomics. Boyce Watkins is the author of several best-selling books on Black entrepreneurship and consistently takes on controversial issues that affect our national community. Dr. Boyce Watkins coming up right now on The Rock Newman Show. Welcome to The Rock Newman Show from the campus of historic Howard University. I'm Rock Newman, and it is my desire to inspire you with personal stories of extraordinary achievement. Tonight, my special guest for the hour is Dr. Boyce Watkins. As you probably gathered in the intro, he is a very dynamic, very busy man. We have a lot to cover, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the show.
My brother.
Thank you.
Oh,
thanks for coming in here today.
Thank you for having me, man.
Right.
It's always an honor and a pleasure.
You know, sitting here at this media platform, I wanted, just trying to figure out what we might talk about first. But the ability to sit here and to try to speak our truth as we know it has something to do with First Amendment rights. You know, you can say you can weave that in to some degree. And it really made me think about what I wanted to talk to you about first. Just recently, Lamont Hill was fired from CNN. As we speak, there's talk about the possibility that his tenured position at Temple University might be in jeopardy. Mm-hmm. I know that you have some history with Lamont Hill. Years ago, I saw him, quote, talk about how you actually helped get him into this universe, this sort of media universe. So, one, I'd like to get some of your reflections on Lamont Hill, because you knew him years ago, and what it is that he did, how you feel about what CNN did to him as a result of the comments that he made. Okay.
I think Mark Lamont Hill is one of the most intelligent and hardest working people I've ever met. You know, our first conversation was, I think, 06 or 07. Mm-hmm. And I remember he called and he said, I see you, you're a professor, you're on TV, I want to be on TV too. Mm. And I just said, well, I remember specifically saying, I can't do these things for you. You know, it's kind of a myth that somebody magically comes along and just puts you out there. I said, but I can tell you what I did, and it's up to you to execute. Mm-hmm. And he executed unlike anybody else. I to this day, I don't think I've seen anybody that really took, you know, when I gave him the game, he ran with the game and I mean, and did things that, you know, that most people can't do. Now,
when the show is over with, I might ask you for the game.
Oh, please! I got to get the game from you first, and I'll tell you, man. You know, so later on, you know, with Mark, I saw his rise, and you know, and we don't see eye to eye politically. We don't agree on a lot of stuff, and sometimes we'll even go back and forth a little bit on Twitter. But for me, on my end, the respect's always there in the sense that he's sharp. But what I see now kind of is a reflection of a conversation I had with him on my porch back in about 2009. At that time, you know, I was on a lot of the different shows, CNN, Fox, and all that, you know, stuff. Roland Martin was doing a lot of the stuff, and Mark was doing a lot of stuff. So we would all see, the three of us would see each other on a lot of these shows. And I remember Roland was getting a deal with CNN at the time, getting cozy with them because the Obama presidency was kind of erupting. Sure. And Mark was getting in with Fox. And I remember I said to him, I said, you know, I really don't think that this is what I want. I don't think I want to deal with either one of these networks because I believe black people have to own our own stuff. We have to have our own channels of distribution for our ideas. And in a way, and maybe it was self-defeating, but I know what kind of black man I am, and so in a way, sometimes I would fire myself in advance. I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and fire me now because I know that eventually when I come out the closet and you find out that I'm really black, you ain't going to really want me around. If I was you, I wouldn't want me around either.
And when you say you talking about the CNNs.
I'm talking about the CNNs and the Foxes.
The MSNBCs.
And the MSNBCs, yes, because there's no place in any major, white-owned media outlet, no disrespect to anybody else, but there's no place in any major predominantly white-owned media outlet for a black man who's really trying to solve the black problem, in my opinion. Everything has to be sort of fed with a big grain of salt and watered down and sugar-coated, and I'm not good at that. I got to serve it to you raw, and it doesn't, it's maybe there's a more eloquent way to do it, but I don't know that method. So years later, and it's funny, that same year, I got banned from CNN for a year, actually, because I got into this back and forth with Bill O'Reilly, and it got out of hand, and eventually somebody at CNN just pulled the plug, and for a whole year, they just didn't have me on. And
let me ask you something. Sure. You say got banned. Was that something ever official, somebody told you, put in writing or anything, or it's just you never got invited back?
It was like dating a girl that just stops calling you when she was calling you every day before that, right? And when that happens, your brother know he done got banned from the
just not into you that much anymore.
Exactly, just wasn't into you. But just like that bad relationship, when you lose one opportunity, it opens your mind up to find others. And so that was actually when I began the process of developing my own space, my own platform. So at the same time, I saw Roland really getting in good with CNN. Mark was doing really well with Fox. And then kind of like as I expected, the bombs dropped later on. You saw Roland got into his thing with it was with the white liberal establishment that actually pushed Roland out of CNN. It was over that LGBT stuff. Right. And then with Mark, the first time he kind of hit a thunderstorm was with Fox, where they kind of outed him as a supporter of Assata Shakur. Right. So it made the rounds, went viral. Next thing you know, Rupert Murdoch announces Mark Lamont Hill is no longer with Fox News, and then later on you had this thing with CNN, with him in his speech at the UN, kind of bumping.
Were you talking just recently?
Yeah, now this happened recently. Right, where he bumps heads with, one of the most powerful lobbies in the world. You can't really say anything that is going to be remotely critical of Israel when you're in the American media system, because we know who has that power, right? It's not even anti-Semitic to say it. It's just it's there, right?
So I was going to ask you, to some extent, that might be considered code. Say ultimately, who controls it, and what you're really saying is what?
I'm saying that the Jewish community is very intelligent when it comes to establishing a power base in banking, business, media. And I bring it up all the time. When I'm teaching my students in the Black Business School, I have them read a book called How the Jews Invented Hollywood that was written by a Jewish man. And I tell them to read it not for any sort of anti-Semitic reason. I'm saying, look, this is the blueprint. This is the power blueprint. And this is what I want, this part of what I want to see for black people for the next 100, 200 years. We need a 100, 150, 200 year plan for the black community. And I don't really see a lot of us really focusing on that because we're so focused on what's going on right now.
Short term.
Short term, right? And it ain't about the short term. It's like if I want to build a strong football program, I got to be thinking years ahead. I got to be thinking strategically. I got to plan well in advance. The present is typically controlled by people who plan for the present in the past. Like if you look at things like gentrification, in 2018, the power in 2018 belongs to people who were thinking about 2018 when it was 1988. You know what I mean? So I'm saying, look, my goal is not to control 2018. I want to control 2048. Let's start planning for that now. And I believe that can be the power move for black people that helps us to really overcome a lot of these things that stress us out.
And so ultimately, Mark Lamont Hill made a comment that was supportive of Palestinian state. It appears as if sort of the death knell was him saying Palestine from the river to the sea, which is a reflection, which is a statement of an elimination of Israel.
Right.
And so that powerful Jewish interest, as you said, smart, intelligent, Jewish interests, have the kind of strength in media and other places that CNN felt it necessary to eliminate his position with them.
Yeah, I think CNN was wrong. I think that they're using that last statement in Mark's very long, eloquent speech as an excuse to ignore what's really happening, which is the oppression of the Palestinian people. From what I know about Mark and his heart, and we only agree 30% of the time. Me and Mark fight like cats and dogs, but from what I know about his heart, I've never heard Mark say anything that even reflects some idea that he might relate to those who want to destroy Israel. Right. That's just not true. Right. So what I think is really happening is you kind of get this mass distraction where it's like, okay, I'm going to focus on this one little thing over here, so you'll ignore the big elephant in the room, which is the way the Palestinian people are being treated. So there's nothing wrong with what he said, but then again, the fundamental reality that we must understand is that black people don't have freedom of speech when we're in media outlets that are owned by other people. We just don't. Freedom of speech is something that you must be able to earn and fight for and afford. And so if you're an employee of CNN, and you're not speaking in a way that is consistent with CNN's agenda, then you need to get out and you need to either go with the agenda or step out and have your own space.
And you don't have freedom of speech if you have taken your team to the Super Bowl and play for the San Francisco 49ers, and you look at the injustice of black people being killed and other maladies in the community, and you take a knee to protest police brutality. You also don't have free speech then.
Well, most people don't have freedom of speech on their job. We just, you got freedom. If you walk out the door and give away your paycheck, then you can say whatever you want. They don't care. They don't care if you take a knee outside the stadium, but you working for us, you are our employee. You really thought, you thought this was something other than what it really is. It's an employer-employee relationship. And I think that black people have to kind of understand that, because you see, the problem is that this integration, civil rights, kumbaya, inclusion conversation that we've been having for 40 years, unfortunately, it led us to falsely believe that we're equal partners in this relationship. It's like a marriage, where one partner really thinks that we're equals when really the other partner is controlling the whole show. So it's more like an abusive marriage. So for black people, I think integration and all that's fine, but integration is like any other partnership. You have to properly negotiate your terms, and we didn't negotiate our terms. We burned down everything that we had so we could go jump ship and go be a part of what somebody else had, and that left us powerless and defenseless.
And lots of businesses and communities destroyed that were surviving.
Yes.
Now, there's been enough looting and burning of thriving black communities. One of the byproducts of integration was we really looted and burned our own communities because we left them behind, seeking acceptance elsewhere to the denial of our own economic base.
I'll tell you, I sometimes, Rock, I say something that probably sounds crazy on the surface, ridiculous. People would think I was the biggest, most pathetic black man on earth. And I said to my friend, I said, thank God for racism. And he said, what do you mean by that? That sounds crazy. And I said, well, I thought about my life and all the times where I was called to battle and forced to rise to the occasion and build my own, because I couldn't get what I was looking for, in mainstream society. And I said, if white folks had been nicer to me and gave me whatever I wanted, I never would have become that man.
You wouldn't have self-actualized nearly.
I never would have self-actualized.
No.
And so I think about that when I think about integration. Obviously, during segregation, we had some rights that were taken away from us, or we weren't allowed to have, but it forced us to be together and to work together and to build together. And that actually, at the end of the day, makes you stronger if you approach it with the right perspective. So I think that there's room now for a re-examination of everything that sort of has happened over the last 40 years, not because we're not respectful of what people accomplished at that time, not because they didn't make tremendous sacrifices, and not because there weren't some gains. But if you look at the measures of quality of life in the black community, there is very little evidence I've seen that black quality of life in 2018 is any better than it was 50 years ago. If you look at education, our kids are not better off educated. Even Malcolm Gladwell actually said this. He said integration did not help black kids in the educational system because they don't have black teachers anymore. If you look at economics, the wealth gap is not only not shrinking, it is growing. It is growing. Student loans, things like that are actually causing it to grow. Half of all black college graduates have defaulted on their student loan debt, which means bad credit, which means many of them are going to die in debt. If you die in debt, then you're not closing the wealth gap, right? So we think that a gap is going to close just because time passes, but it doesn't close if you're standing still or running backward.
We probably could both get depressed here if we started to talk about the amount of land that we had 50 and 70 years ago and how that land is gone now. That's a huge gap of us, of our land base having diminished dramatically.
Yeah, we what it is that in our culture, our economic culture, which we're still working to shape that, right? It's because some of it's still slave culture, or this other, I don't know exactly what to call it, but there's very little conversation that we have with children coming up about the importance of ownership. Ownership. So in the Black Business School, we teach children. We tell that's the first people we want to teach. We have a business.
And when
school.
you say in the Black Business School, you're talking about this is your baby.
Yeah. The Black Business School is online, and we have 68,000 students. And one of the things we did was we created a business school for children. And what we tell the kids is we give them an acronym. We tell them to keep their poise. POISE. POISE stands for producer, owner, investor, saver, entrepreneur. And we tell them this is what you want to be, because the economic system can be compared to a horse and jockey scenario. You think about a horse race, a horse does all the work, the jockey gets all the credit, right? The horse does all the running, the jockey gets all the money. And in capitalism, unfortunately, in America, it's a horse and jockey. You think about if someone goes to rent an apartment, the renter is paying the mortgage for the landlord. So the landlord gets wealth, the renter just gets run down, right? You think about an employer-employee scenario, the employee is putting in the labor and getting some compensation that they use to maybe go pay rent, right? And the employer is the one who owns the business, builds the wealth, leaves something for their children, right? And the list goes kind of on and on and on when you talk about the investor versus the borrower.
Makes me think of a documentary, not so articulately named, but maybe appropriately named, the pimp and hoe mentality.
Yeah, it's a pimp and hoe system. Absolutely, absolutely. And the hoes usually don't have much negotiating power. And I think that I think it's appropriate. I think pimp and hoe is really good to describe the NCAA. Literally every single tactic a pimp uses to control a prostitute.
Yes.
That's exactly what the NCAA. I mean, I'm talking about the threats of severe punishment for deviation, for all these things. So I think by just being aware of all of this and how all this works is a great first step. But
let me stay with that for a second, because the school, whoever it might be, Arizona State, receives from its apparel company millions and millions and millions of dollars. And it says to the student, athlete, you got to wear, so therefore you have to wear X brand. And if you don't wear X brand, there is punishment. So the student athlete feels as if I have no choice, except proportionately the student athlete is getting a minuscule value. They say he's getting an education, most of them don't. Most of them don't graduate. So many don't graduate. So at the end of the day, there's very little that the student athlete is getting of the millions of dollars that the pimp is receiving.
Absolutely. I'm gonna tell you, I give a lot of credit to LeBron James, because I think he's doing a documentary on HBO about that kind of thing. And I think that that's a reflection of the fact that he skipped that whole system because of that. If you recall, when LeBron was in high school, he got a lot of grief because I think he was driving a new car, or his mama got a gift or something. And they were making millions of dollars off of him in high school. And so what people have to understand, what black people have to understand, is the NCAA, that is a racial issue. It is a racial issue because the NCAA extracts about at least $1 billion a year out of the black community. Because remember, we are not people without assets. We have the best athletes in the world. We started and created hip hop. but everybody's making money off of it, but us. The list goes on and on. And with the NCAA, what you're really seeing is this mass wealth extraction that is where the accomplice is the federal government that sort of overlooks the extreme violation of labor rights of these athletes. And the reason they overlook it is because in their mind they're thinking, well, this Negro should be happy with what he's getting. Without us, he would still be in the hood. And we know that the scholarship obviously doesn't give the equivalent value to what they're giving the university, because if it did, then you would just pay the athletes what they're worth and then let them pay their own tuition, right? It doesn't cost much to bring one more student in a class. If I'm already teaching 30 people, who cares if I'm teaching 33, right? And so that whole idea that that this is even a remotely fair trade is kind of ridiculous. And what has to happen is, I believe these older athletes, the people that got a little bit of money, they need to get behind some good lawyers that can file some really good antitrust lawsuits and fight for those labor rights.
Having this conversation with you, I want to get your answers, but man, I'll take the liberty here to say to any parent of a premier athlete that is out there, that is what the black community could do, the impact that it could have across this land, if there was a cohesiveness of thought that said, until so many things get better, pick your choice of what you want to get better, but we're not sending our black athletes to these predominantly white schools, we're sending them to black schools. How much that could change this society, I don't think we can measure.
Well, I agree with you. I agree 100%. I mean, the University of Missouri, I think the football players did a protest there over a race issue, and they got the president fired in about 2 or 3 days.
That's right.
And
that's the power. That's the power that we just won't seize and use it.
And people don't want us to know our power. That's why their greatest asset is an uneducated black man. They love when we are more focused on the booty, the bling, and whatever it is, than we are on actual power structures and how this works. So that's why, a lot of my students and stuff like that follow me online and everything, I tell them, when your kids grow up, have them read books like Powernomics first. Have them read,
Claude Anderson.
Claude Anderson books.
Sat in that seat a time or two.
Dr. Claude Anderson is one of the greatest human beings to ever walk the face of this planet. One of the greatest gifts from God that we will ever receive. And along with yourself, Louis Farrakhan, and a few others that just really kind of understand this game and how it's played. And what I want people to do is hold out hope and understand that it takes time. Just because you don't see the change you're looking for in this lifetime, you plant those seeds. It's a 100, 200 year game we're playing, not something that's going to change in 2 or 3 years.
You talk 100 years, 200 years. I follow some of your stuff on social media and saw some of your videos from China. I've heard you say that your nearly 2-week visit to China helped shape your perspective or grow or advance your perspective as you look out at the world. One, if I can be so bold to ask, what took you there? Why did you go there? And what was it about your time in China that has further opened your eyes?
I've always been fascinated with China as a cultural and economic entity. If you understand economics, you can see how it links to culture. If you have bad culture, you won't have good economic outcomes. And so I've been really fascinated by how they do things. China, they were in a very bad, they were kind of where black folks are. 50 years ago, China was not respected as an economic entity. And I said, how did they do this? So that's part of what that's the big reason that I felt like I had to go back. I taught a class there in 2006. I
taught a class in China in 2006?
Yeah, okay. And I was fascinated by the difference in terms of just how they deal with professors, how the kids are raised, the unity and cohesion was really fascinating. And the other thing that brought me there was black love. I got this beautiful black woman next to me that I just she could go to Siberia. I'm gonna follow her anywhere she goes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we went to China. We went to about 4 different cities: Shanghai, Beijing, Guilin, and somewhere else, Xi'an. And so we were walking through these cities and we were listening on the same iPhone to these podcasts on Chinese history,
Yeah.
and I'm looking around and seeing it, and I'm also hearing how we got to where we are now, and I'm also sort of paying attention to the economic strategies and talking to the entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
See, here's the crazy thing. I probably bumped into 300 Chinese entrepreneurs because they got the little booth set up everywhere.
Yeah.
And I bet you not one of them went to business school.
Yeah.
Right? Not one, maybe a couple.
Yeah.
Right? And, but there was a standardization in terms of how they dealt with the customer, how they negotiated the price, how they set up their supply chains. I'd see the same products in Beijing that I would see in Guilin, you know, and I would think so there's something there's something here.
Something cultural.
Something cultural, right? So for black folks, I said, let me go out here and just kind of study this, meditate on it, analyze it, read up on it, and put together a model that I think you can apply to your own family. Because the thing for black folks, in my opinion, is that, first of all, we need to stop waiting for Superman when it comes to healing and building our community.
Right.
One great black man or one great black woman is not going to carry us
Yeah.
out there. We like our heroes, you know,
Yeah,
we get
yeah.
excited about it, but
Yeah.
that's not what's going to do it. The other thing is that I think it's probably a little naive for us to believe that we can get 40 million people on the same page,
Yeah.
particularly when you have so many distractions from media and the brainwashing that's happening in the school systems and all this other stuff. So what I've been telling people is, look at your household. Start with what you control, your sphere of influence. And I told them, I said, look, China is not a democracy, it's a dictatorship. I said, when I grew up in my house, our house was a dictatorship too. Mama, daddy, and
Yeah.
we follow suit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And in that household, in that dictatorship, in that government called your home, you get to design the policies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You get to shape the culture.
My daddy used to say it was a benevolent dictatorship. I didn't see that much benevolence.
My daddy wasn't benevolent at all. There was an overdose on tough love, and I like that because tough love made me a tough man.
Yeah.
You know, and so you know, in that space, you know, I've pretty much laid out to the families where I said, look, here are about 7 or 8 things you can do in your household that will shape an empowered culture, one that is built on educational excellence. We must embrace that. We embrace excellence in entertainment and sports. We must also embrace excellence when it comes to education, reading, writing, math, black history, all that stuff. Next, excellence when it comes to how we see business, how we learn how to make money. The first words out of your mouth when you talk to your child about how to make money should not be fill out this job application.
Right.
No, the hell that sure that's on the list, but that's about number 88 on the list. After we go through all the other ways that you can make money, started with the 3 pillars of wealth: real estate investing, stock and bond investing, and entrepreneurship. Teach them to be a boss first, and then let them decide if they want to be something other than the boss, right? Because I'm telling you, it's especially true for black men. Black men are emasculated by this system. We are broken down and made into little boys. And a community cannot be led by a pack of little boys.
Yeah.
We need our men, and our men are being castrated through the door because they're taught that the only way to survive is to sit down, sit still, and be quiet. And if you raise up, then they're going to knock you back down. So the ability to make your own money, I believe for children should be one of the most important skills that a child learns, because once they do that, you find that a person who makes their own money has a different level of swag, a different level of confidence.
Yeah.
You know, all those
and,
things.
And while you were in China, I mean, did you see vestiges of that? Did you see examples of that?
I saw examples of entrepreneurs who, I don't think they were all making a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I saw, I saw people that they knew the government wasn't going to never take care of them, and they could scream Black Lives Matter, and they knew nobody wasn't going to listen, and they just kind of got the job done. That's what I saw. I saw hustlers. That's
Did
what
you say hustle?
hustle.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what stands
Spirit
out.
of independence.
When I saw that, I just saw a hustle mentality, and I
Yeah.
saw cohesion,
Yeah.
where you just have a lot of uniformity in terms of how people feel and how they think. So, and also I saw China first. The reason that the rest of the world couldn't form productive trade relationships with China is because they all came in thinking, we're going to milk China the way we milked Africa and we
Yeah.
milked the black community. We're
Yeah.
going to form these, we're going to integrate them,
Right.
right, into
Right.
the world economy, and
Right.
we're going to milk them like a cow.
Yeah.
And they didn't understand that the Chinese had a different kind of mindset.
Yeah.
Their mindset was very much China first. We take care of ours 1st. We're bringing our smartest and our best and brightest back home. We're going to build up for China. So what they found was that instead of them forming these relationships where they were extracting wealth out of China, China was extracting wealth out of them. So as a result, you know, a lot of the factory jobs that would normally be in Detroit and Toledo are over in Shanghai and Beijing, right? So there's something to learn from that in terms of just a mindset that says, you know, for black folks, translating this to black folks, there's nothing wrong with loving your people first. There's nothing wrong with saying, I'm black, I'm proud, I'm black all the time, 100%. You can't deal with that, that's your issue. And then you can still integrate with the rest of the world.
Which don't mean you're anti something else.
You ain't got to be anti nothing, right? I'm only anti-hate. I don't believe in hating anybody on the color of their skin and none of that. I don't do that. I'm too busy loving my own people. You know, but the reason that black love is interpreted as hatred for white people is because there are so many people that are heavily invested in the oppression of black people for their own personal gain. So when you come up, they feel like you're pulling them down.
It's a threat.
Right, it's a threat, right? So inevitably it's going to be a threat, but that's okay. You know, we can handle threats. You can't really, it's like sports, you know, the other team is always going to find a way to beat you. If you start suddenly competing for points and act like you're trying to win, why wouldn't they try to stop you from winning? Because they want that trophy too, and it's all right.
So it's something else I like to talk about, because I had another friend who, he took an Asian trip. He first was in Tokyo, he went to Vietnam, he went to Hong Kong, and he talked about, again, this was through Facebook, you see this. Facebook, some of what Facebook does is opens up the world to you. And the modernization, he was fascinated by the modernization throughout Asia. And I would venture to say that the American psychology and mentality is one that thinks, you know, just repeated, you know, greatest of everything in the world, not having a clue about some of the transportation systems and the rest. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Man, when I was in China, they had bullet trains, and here all we got is Amtrak. You know, I saw holograms. I saw all different kinds of technology there that I don't think is going to get here for years. You know, I think this idea that America is just the greatest and the best at everything, and we're just so far ahead of everyone else, that's just propaganda. And that's just a lie. When you leave the country, you start seeing things that you do not see in America. So that modernization piece that you're talking about, I noticed that, and it made me kind of think, wow, you know, there was a time when we really were leading the world, and I just think that through dysfunctional leadership, poor educational systems, et cetera, we're slowly falling behind. We are a nation on the decline. That's a reality.
You know, I'll tell you something. There's something I hear about that I don't fully understand the ramifications of it, and I want to see if you, as more of a sort of the economist, can weigh in on it. You continually hear about China holding so much of America's debt, that America is incredibly in debt to China. You studied that at all, looked at that at all?
Yeah, America's in debt to everybody. Couple thoughts come to mind. Number one of the reasons that China was able to advance economically is because they have a very high savings rate. America is very, very bad at saving. We don't save money. We spend, and we borrow and go into debt, individually and collectively. That's one thing. Second thing is that for as far as
consumer society.
Right. Yeah. So as far as policy in the black community, I encourage people to start saving more and investing more. Don't do what everybody else is doing, because it's a mess. But the second thing that comes to mind is that America has hit a level of debt that is just unsustainable. That debt is going to, you know, if anything causes the economic system in America to crumble, it's going to be the amount of debt we have, because we don't have the political strength or wherewithal or focus to really attack an issue like that, because that requires long-term thinking, short-term sacrifice. That's not part of our culture, you know, in the government on down, right? So I think the debt problem is only going to get worse. Eventually, Social Security is going to die. People have to start, you know, think outside the box when it comes to your retirement plan, because the systems that we had in place will not be there in 20, 30 years.
You really think that?
Absolutely. No question about it. We're afraid. We're just too proud to admit that we can't afford to do certain things. So we're a lot like that family that, they're just used to the private school and the fancy cars and, and paying for everybody at the dinner at the expensive steakhouse. But what they're not telling anybody is that they're really maxing out their credit card to maintain this illusion. And eventually that illusion is gonna just fall apart.
And so you think, I mean, those looking in here now, for example, obviously there's not a crystal ball, but you think that it's not unreasonable to think that somewhere 25, 30 years from now, the Social Security will not be solvent any longer.
Yeah, I think it's going to be dramatic changes. It doesn't mean it wouldn't be there in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But America, unfortunately, is kind of a country that's built on very, very bad versions of capitalism. Capitalism itself is debatable in terms of whether it's good or bad, but people who understand it know that it comes in a variety of forms, and we're sort of on that bad extreme because we believe that greed is good and greed is okay. It started really mostly with Ronald Reagan. And so what happens is you got these people at that top 1-2% that are going to just suck up all the resources, and eventually you see America kind of decay into like that third world country status where you got these massive wealth gaps. So that's what I predict in the future. I can't stop that or slow that down. I don't know what it would take to do that politically. I don't even know if we have what it takes in this country to do that. But what I've been telling black folks is just kind of get ready. Because there will be that great divide, and you want to make sure you're on the right side of that divide.
You just mentioned whether or not you had the answer politically about something, which brings me to my next subject I want to talk to you about. The midterms were just over a month ago. Midterms, 2018 midterm election, just over a month ago. And I looked at some of your stuff where you went in hard on. And you certainly did not hold on to any sacred cows, if you will. And what I mean by that is whether it was Obama or Oprah that might have been campaigning for Stacey Abrams in Georgia or Gillum in Florida or elsewhere. I saw you take acute exception to part of their strategy to motivate people to vote was to call and to tell them that your ancestors died for your right to vote, so therefore you should go out and vote now for the person I'm telling you to vote for. Can you kind of take us through what you were thinking then and why you went kind of hard?
Well, because it's disrespectful. And I think I would say my personal bias probably is that I don't like it when I feel like people are playing mind games with me. It's just disrespectful to do that. And so if you want me to vote for you, that's cool. Like, we can talk about that. Okay, I'm gonna tell you what my issues are. You tell me how you're gonna help with those issues,
right.
And then we have sort of a respectful transaction. But when you try to guilt trip me into voting and you refuse to answer the questions that I have for you as a candidate, that's a problem. Or if you try to use fear as a way to get me to vote for you, that's a problem. Or when I look at that Democratic Party and I notice they tend to seem to sort of ignore black issues on every other part of the spectrum except for when you get to voting rights. And I'm not a stupid man. I said, well, of course you want me to have voting rights so I can vote for you. Maybe a husband wants his wife to have a good vacuum cleaner so she can clean the living room, or she got to have the best pots and pans in the kitchen. Like that. But that's not really for her. It's for him, and he needs to acknowledge that. So I think that the exception I take with this whole idea of invoking the ancestors into the conversation is, number one, those are my ancestors. Right. Don't bring my ancestors into this conversation.
Don't talk about my mom.
Exactly. Don't talk about my mama. Right. And number two, if you really respected my ancestors, then you would have an honest conversation about reparations for what my ancestors went through. Now because they could shut me up quickly by just coming up with a plan on reparations. Right. If they start talking about reparations on a regular basis, as much as they talk about voting rights, I wouldn't say a word. I'd say, go vote for them. Now they talking some sense.
So when you talk about the black community in this two-party political system, generally speaking, the Republicans disregard you, don't really care. The Democrats so often appeal to some of your interests, but really take you for granted. We really got them, and that is reflected in the meager resources that campaigns put in to actually hiring African Americans that they're trying to court. So on the one hand, you got a disregard. On the other hand, you really got you're seriously being taken for granted. So what's Boyce Watkins' advice?
Well, my advice is something that I guess becomes a threat to some people in the system. My advice to black people is do what you want. Just play the same game they're playing. They're doing what's best for themselves and their family. Mm-hmm. You do what's best for you and your family. Mm-hmm. Don't even do what I tell you. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for or whether you should vote or not vote. I just say make your own mind and don't let nobody make you feel bad about that. Mm-hmm. And that was literally my consistent talking point, but yet people, of course, that doesn't represent their interest, they're going to run around saying, "Oh, he's telling people not to vote." Mm-hmm. You show me any video or article I've ever written where I told black people not to vote. Right. I might tell you that I'm not voting. Yeah. But I'm not going to tell you what to do. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's okay. Mm-hmm.
I saw a lot of folks. I saw a lot of folks throwing darts at you for what you did say about what you felt Oprah, Obama, and others were doing with the guilt trip.
Yeah, if people ain't throwing darts at you, then you're not saying anything new or interesting. Mm-hmm. If you really challenge pre-existing ways of thinking, the first reaction people are going to have is anger, because you're disrupting their schemata. That's what they call it in your brain, where you are used to seeing things this way, and when somebody comes along and says, no, it's not like that at all, your first reaction is like, no, what are you talking about, right? Shock, disbelief. And another piece of evidence, that tells, in fact, the more darts that are thrown, kind of tells me that I've really hit something. Like I've struck a chord with you. Yeah. Because if I was talking crazy and it was just a stupid man just talking out the side of his neck, you wouldn't react to that. Right. You're reacting because I'm really forcing you to confront a problem that you can't solve right now. And so, I'm okay with people throwing darts. It comes with the territory. My goal is, I believe we should seek truth. Yeah. As black people, and that means having hard conversations, because if you keep doing things the way you've been doing it for the last 40, 50 years, you're going to get the same results. Seriously, we've been electing these people for I don't know how long, putting them in office over and over again, putting black politicians in office. We done had 1,000 Stacey Abrams and Gilliams. I mean, no, we haven't had many governors, but we done had the mayors and all this. Show me where black people as a collective are doing better because of that, right? So we know that is not proven to work. So that means that by default, you must find solutions that are outside of that box. If you can't go outside the box, then you're just going to live the same 50-year period over and over again.
You have you have some detractors out there, and you said if folks aren't throwing darts at you, you're really not doing what you need to do. It has surfaced recently. A couple of different folks have come up with lawsuits, and you've got people, social media journalists, who are talking about those people with lawsuits that are accusing you of behavior that is less than professional, less than honorable, that you didn't pay somebody $100 for something. I ain't quite understand the full lawsuit, but it got some traction, it got some reaction, got some folks talking. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to address some of that.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you what, Louis Farrakhan, I owe him a lot for teaching me how to deal with what it means to draw so much attention from so many different types of black folks. I've always admired this man for the fact that he's so patient and capable of loving black people, even when when the love isn't necessarily returned. He also taught me a lot about your critics. You actually, instead of even trying to shut them down, you should encourage them to speak. Sometimes your critics might be right, sometimes they just have a different point of view, etc. And at the very least, at the end of the day, you got to move forward. Let your light shine. Let your truth shine, no matter what, because you got people that love you, and that's who you're here for. You're not here for the people who don't like you. I had to go through that whole process, and another thing that really helped me a lot was a guy that I actually respect.
When you said go through the whole process, I'm thinking you're saying when you say that you had to digest what was going on, the slings and the arrows. And some of that hurt along the way?
It's very hurtful. It's very hurtful because if I think about maybe the top 3 or 4 critics I have on the internet, these are all people that I've helped a lot. These are all people. These are not strangers. It's one thing if a stranger or a white man or somebody who hates you says something negative. It's another thing when somebody that you almost treated like a family member is coming back to get you. It makes you question and say, what did I do to hurt this person? Because usually when people are lashing out, it's because they feel hurt. So they say, I'm going to hurt you back. And hurt people. And black people in the black community, we re-traumatize each other. And so the first thing I really did actually, when one of the critics really attacked me, actually a couple of times, is one of them I actually sent a text. My friend Yvette, that's her name. And I sent her a text and I said, Yvette, if I hurt you in some way, I am so sorry. I don't want to fight you. I want to fight white supremacy. I want to build the community. I don't want to fight you. That's not going to help you. It doesn't help me. I don't want to do that. And I don't know. She didn't text back or call back, but I think she might have got the message. But either way, it was me kind of just saying, I don't want to do all that. You know, I don't want to get into these chicken fights that we get into as black people. And so. The fights happen, and as far as stuff with like the lawsuit and stuff like that, that was one of those situations where I had to figure out like what was going on. I didn't. The suit didn't make sense to me, and I think all that gets played out in court and everything. You got to get the lawyers and stuff. But I learned Will Smith actually showed me something on that. Actually, I don't know Will personally. This is actually something he was talking about publicly. Right. But he was basically saying, he said, as a celebrity, I get sued 15 times a year. And he said, I have to keep all these lawyers around just to defend myself for these lawsuits. And he said, one of the things I had to learn was I had to learn how to fight off predators without letting my heart go dark. And that meant a lot to me because you get to the point where you're like, gosh, should I even have friends? Am I, because I don't want people, again, when you're seeing, it would make more sense to me if these were people that I had done nothing for. But when you think, you're like, wait a minute, I paid that person's rent. I helped that person when nobody else would, and what it does is, I guess, is maybe there's an expectation that you'll do more, or maybe there's a hurt and a bitterness that occurs when you say, I'm sorry, I just can't mess with you no more. I can't, do this. And so I think that a lot of this game just comes down to being able to accept when people are just going to think what they think about you, and then just continue to be who you are and do what you do. Because I say to people, if you really want to know who I am, I got about 10,000 videos, literally, probably 7,000 to 10,000 videos right there on YouTube. Right. Go watch the videos, look me in the eye, analyze every word, and you'll get a real clear picture of who I am. It's not like I am pretending to be this person in public, and then back in the backstage, I'm Suge Knight, slapping people, throwing them off balconies and all that. Right. That's not the truth. So, it comes with the territory. I'm okay with dealing with that.
Boyce, so you often speak in your videos, and you have platforms where your interest. I think on our opening we said blackonomics. That you focus on blackonomics. You were at Syracuse and you came out and you've really been talking about that. So, what I'd like to give you an opportunity to do to share with us, what is it that you, as Boyce Watkins, the educator, the professor, the professional, with the school that you're talking about, tell us about the school and what you are trying to accomplish with the school.
Well, much of everything I do is based on what we call the Black Core of Three. The Black Core of Three basically says we believe black people should educate our own children, create our own jobs, and support black business. So all of that, from everything else I do, spins out of that. And so the Black Business School was something I created after teaching 25 years, teaching finance to mostly white college kids for 25 years, Syracuse University, Ohio State, et cetera. And what I realized was, I said, I'm teaching all these amazing secrets to a bunch of people that aren't even in my community, that are all going off to Wall Street making all this money. I really didn't feel fulfilled. I was told that I was a successful black man, but I didn't feel successful. I said, I feel like I'm just spinning my wheels. Like what I'm doing isn't really making a difference. So I realized that with the Black Business School, we could solve a couple of problems. One, you solve the student loan debt issue because I believe people can learn for $3 or $4 a day, and you can run an effective business model off of that, as opposed to paying $50,000 a year. Right. And you can still get access to quality professors, and the same was because I have a lot of friends that used to teach at universities who want to get back to the black community, and I said I can reach these people, so come on in. You can make some money, and we can kind of help people at the same time. And then the other thing was. I felt that black people need to learn different things. Most business schools in America do not teach you anything about what black people need to know. They teach you how to go and work for a business. They do not teach you how to build a business from the ground up. And my belief is that the solution to institutionalized racism is to get out of the racist institutions and build institutions of your own, right? So, it's like if this building was infected with white supremacy, why do I think I can overcome white supremacy that exists in this building by staying inside this building? I need to go across the street and build my own house. So we focus primarily on the 3 pillars of wealth: stock investing, real estate investing, and entrepreneurship. And we argue that those should be the first 3 areas that every child should understand at an early age. And the power play for black people, again, we don't buy into this idea of, okay, we want inclusion, we want equality and all. We ain't trying to be equal, we ain't trying to be included, we ain't trying to integrate, we're trying to win. This is a power move for us. So basically, the power move is, I said, what if we took high-level financial concepts and broke them down so that they could be understood by a 7-year-old using cartoons and things like that. And what if we sent our children to business school in the 2nd grade? And they'd be 15 years ahead of other kids. And so that's what we did. So we our motto is we educate the whole family, we educate the children, and it's working like a charm. We have about 70,000 students. It's great.
So we've got like 2 minutes left. I can't believe I was going by that fast. So how do people get in touch with you, with the programs, and what does it cost? And kind of tell us the Reader's Digest version of here's the opportunity with the 90 so seconds we have left.
Well, most of our programs are about $3 or $4 a day, and a good way to stay in our network is if you go to drboycewatkins.net, drboycewatkins.net. You can just get on the list, and then that way we'll send you some information. We give more away for free than most people get by spending $50,000 a year at a university. We got thousands of people that will attest to this fact. It's not me just saying this.
And these are, as you said, former professors, relationships that you've developed, that a parent can put a student into a class, and that class is being taught by somebody that's highly professional and proficient in what they're doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have lots of children in our children's programs. It's called Black Millionaires of Tomorrow, and we teach them stock and bond investing, real estate investing, all kinds of stuff, entrepreneurship, and basically it's all for a reason, though. At the end of the day, our reasoning, our logic, we don't want you to just be there because you want to make some more money or whatever. We want you to understand what we're trying to do here. We're trying to build the future. And building the future means building up an army, not just a few elite Negroes. I'm talking about 100,000, 300,000, 400,000 children that are armed with a keen understanding of how wealth is built and how institutions are built. These are going to be the job creators 40, 50 years from now. So that's what this is all about, and that's how we do things, and it's working very well. And we're only going to get better with it.
I recently had a friend, and again, now I got the 90-second signal, but who told me that bringing up, that I must have bumped my head to bring up the idea, and this was a black guy, to bring up the idea of reparations. Ain't no reparations going to happen. And you brought up reparations earlier, but all I have is a minute left for you to explain why reparations should come to the black community.
Well, because we're owed about $13 trillion from this government. If you look at all the wealth that was stolen from us and all the horror and pain that we went through all the terrorism and all that. And I think that reparations, some sort of reparations plan, is a way for America to truly heal. You have to do that. And even if they never pay it, we should always keep talking about it as a reminder that, no, I'm not going to support you and do what you want me to do unless you take care of us. And that's my official position on that.
Thanks for coming here today.
Thank
man.
you, brother. Thank you for having
Appreciate
me.
you.
All right.
That's our show for this evening, folks. For more information on this program or any other program produced by WHUT, go to WHUT.org. Goodbye and God bless.
This program was produced by WHUT, Howard University Television, and made possible by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.